Okay, so let's share. Would anybody like to share how they feel their grandmothers might define resilience, and or a word that's similar to what resilience means in your language? Anybody? And I think we have a few mics around, so because I wanted to write. Sorry, you know I come from a background of like community training and all, so I'm like, I feel disempowered with no pen. I know, there was no pen. Okay, anybody? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, so I'm a friend from Ghana, and he's using Akana language, which is in Ghana, and the appropriate word is afibo. 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 Yes. AFEEBO. Yeah, so it is something which benefits BOO. Yeah, it's just one, it's just simple. Yeah, so it is, the way it means that something which benefits, have benefit forever, and something that lasts longer. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so my friend says that in Swahili it's called ustahimilivu. Ustahimilivu. Yes. Which means stay longer, sustain. And not interfere.
Anybody else? Can I give you the story of the grandmother or the language?
Thank you. With my partner here, I shared that it means, my grandmother would say, being tough and not giving up, being strong and not giving up, and in my language, she would probably call it guma. Yeah. I'm from Uganda, and that's from the western part of Uganda.
Yeah. I'm from Tanzania, and as my sister said, for us we use the word ustahimilivu. That's a Swahili word for resilience. And we discussed with my partner here that the way our grandmothers would look at it, it's from the point of family ties, you know. And their resilience will be built upon the little resources they had, the many children they had. For example, my grandmother had 12 children. I told her, and she said they didn't have the privilege. For example, none of the children wouldn't know that today we woke up in a hostel without a sugar. You know, that's the kind of strength. She used the word strength, the inner strength they had. Something that perhaps the modern generation, my pastor, wouldn't be able to hide. Yeah. So that's what we discussed and shared.
We just have one more for the people that came in new. The question is, we're talking about resilience. So the question is, how would your grandmother or grandmother of yours understand the concept of resilience? And based on that, what would be a word for that in your language, your grandmother's language? Okay.
I have the mic. So for our three-member group, we had 2 words because we have 3 languages. So the one word is ubuhangazi, Tara from Eastern Uganda, and the concept for us related with the long-lasting endurance. Around long suffering. We didn't know. And then the other one, which is Samia from Eastern Uganda, is we thought about it as the slam, elastic, like elastic, but would say elastic, like elastic, like how the old woman would say it, elastic, but it's more from elastic. And what we had in mind was stretching and being able to come back, stretch further and come back.
So I was discussing with now for her, the language she uses humility in full, meaning perseverance. And I am from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Unfortunately, I was brought up in a very cosmopolitan setup. So we use Swahili for so ustahimilivu. It's a word that I use.
Thank you. Let me correct the word. Umilidia. Umilidia. R-A-R-I-A. Thank you.
So we just wanted to give you a flavor of the idea that actually in our context, these things have long meaning and long understanding. And so what we have here are a number of words that suggest that resilience is something that lasts long, is something that should have benefit forever, that it has an inner strength, that it also has a tensile strength. So we have the elastic, which means it's able to bounce back, right? You can pull it and it bounces back. But also this one is actually very interesting about also that from a grandmother's viewpoint, resilience is about sustaining an us. So for a grandmother, it's about sustaining the family, the community, and the relationships and being able for them to continue. Right? Is that fair enough in terms of something you would accept as a general component of resilience for us? Okay. And the us is an interesting one. So what we wanted to do, and now our time is very limited, I wanted to just do a quick thing because I really want us to think, guys. The point of these spaces is really to enable us to think and not necessarily to be talked at the whole time, okay? Because the point is we're supposed to be improving our thinking and our practice, so we go back and we do things in a better fashion. And I'm also very cognizant of the provocations that Brian offered us, which I feel like we have yet to synthesize. Because he was pointing to a number of structural fallacies, structural questions, right? Which are quite serious and actually we need to contend with. Even if your conclusion is in the end, I get it, I'm still just gonna do what I'm doing. It's okay, but you're doing it conscious that that's what you're up to, okay? Or, which I think was not an offer that he presented because he was being polemic, and so he was putting like, it's either this or this, but in reality, we know that there is also the power of subversion, or the power of taking things that are meant for something and using them for something else. And I do think that we have to think a bit creatively in that fashion. If we're going to stay in mainstream structures, how do we use them in ways that are actually transformative? Some contend it's not possible, but I disagree actually. I think it can be possible because nothing exists without history. And so even mobilization, right, mass-based mobilization, doesn't exist without a structure. So everything has a history. So just to think about. So what I want you to do is this now, because we will come to a conversation with our resource hubs, but it's not, again, the point was not about that. Because the idea is we're here because we're all invested in the same question, which means we all have knowledge here. So this is the thing. So if we understand resilience as something that lasts long, benefits forever, that is about being able to having inner strength, but also being able to bounce back, and it's ultimately about something to do with sustaining the potential of an us, of a collectivity, okay? I want you to think about whatever structures you're in that you want to be resilient, okay? And I want you to just sit down, write down, you need paper, everyone has paper. This room is very hot. I want you to write down all of the different elements that exist in your ecosystem. Remember on the very first day, for those of you who were in the plenary, I was saying that a system is a set of actors or elements, right? But that are actually in relationship to each other. The system is not this dot or that dot, which is your organization, your philanthropic, whatever, your initiative, your community, but it's all the other relationships and the relationships between that make a system. So I want you to just quickly think about who or what are all of the actors or elements that affect the work that you do. All of the actors and elements that affect the work that you do. Okay? Which can include global financial markets and what? Epistemic annihilation of African traditional knowledges and everything Brian said you can put inside as well, okay? I want you to just put all of the different actors. So draw yourself, if you want, as a little dot, and just think about what are some of the other dots that you have a relationship with. And this should be really as a, whatever entity it is that you engage in this question of philanthropy in. So it could be as people, as an entity that engages philanthropy to raise resources, to give resources, to advise on it. So you kind of in the capacity that you come into this conference in. And if you engage in a lot of philanthropy as yourself, then you could certainly put yourself in relationship to these things, because we do matter. If you only have 3 things in there, or 2, you and a donor, then it's not your ecosystem. Okay, guys? Huh? Push yourself. It can include the people that tell stories about the thing that you do that either discourage or encourage it, right? It can be narratives, okay? Alright, we're gonna come back together because of time. I just wanted to stimulate you and I want to hear from you. Who are some of the actors that impact on your ability to do your work? Okay? All right. Anybody willing to give us a bit of a list?
I wrote my founder, my name is Devin. I wrote my founder, board members. We have delegates and donor aides, like people who help us fundraise.
Sorry, as you do, just say your name and what you're speaking from. So, like where you work or the thing you're speaking about.
You're right. My name is Debbie Luwaga, and I work with a fund that supports women, youth, and children in Uganda. So my ecosystem, I'm sure it's a lot larger than this, but this is what I can think of right now, is that we have a founder, board members, delegates / ambassadors. We have our donors who are both individual and corporate. We have technology, community, and I wrote new and old because we have the old sense of what community is, and then we're also reimagining what community could look like. Cultural structures and norms, so things that exist within just people's psychology of how they see themselves, how they see philanthropy, how they see relating to each other that affects the work that we do or how we relate to those people. Education and the lack thereof sometimes, and then closed-mindedness / bigotry / internalized racism / exclusion. That is those are some factors that I have encountered so far that can get in the way of our work. And then new systems that we are creating, but also old ones of how things have been done traditionally or historically. And then we have politicians or governance and broken governance systems, and then bureaucracy as well.
My name is Lucy, and I'm representing Good Kenya Foundation in Kenya. So I have a list of 16. The government, grant makers, or the donors, the institutional donors, individual donors, mentors, trainees who are, can be called in other places beneficiaries, volunteers. We work with a lot of volunteers, the team, which is the staff, schools, where we pick our trainees from. This is the high schools and primary schools in Kenya. Our board, the parents or guardians of these young people, the local government, corporates and small, medium business enterprises that we work with for internships and for support. Facilitators, who are the people who train the young people. Influencers, which is basically the ambassadors who support our program, especially those who have many followers online. Then community leaders, which are religious, village leaders, and then finally associations and platforms, which is associations like EAPN, Giving Tuesday, platforms like Mchanga, Global Giving.
Any other example? One other person is willing to share.
Social media.
Social media platforms. Is there anything people? There's an actor that's critical to your ecosystem that affects your work that isn't mentioned.
Business people.
Young people and academia and the media as well.
Great.
Pandemics.
Bacteria. Okay, good. All right. So the idea of just expanding this out is artificial intelligence. Okay, which is tech. All right. So the point of doing this is just really to say again, I've really, as an activist, ended up in this funding situation. now for almost 15 years, I don't know how, but here we are. And I always find it interesting because I'm interested in transformation, but very often we have all of the amazing ideas and complex analysis, and when we get into spaces like this, all we talk about is a binary relationship between people who have money and people who want money. The point is to remember that if this is you, that you exist in a very complex system of a range of actors that actually ultimately impact your ability to fulfill your purpose, okay? And so when we think about anything in these conversations, including this question of resilience that we're going to turn to our three resource people, we have to think about all of these different dimensions. At times, you may think, I just need to find Jessica in the hallway, just be like, start talking about something, not introduce myself, or give where, by the way, Sally me out. Okay, you don't say hi, my name is so, you just start saying, boom, I want money. Okay, that's fine, except that we're not thinking about lots of things. Like, for example, what is the regulatory framework around whether or not that can even happen? Why is it that there's this pressure around leading organizations to be registered and have accounts and what have you? Particularly for bilateral money, why is it that they need so much paperwork? They exist in a system that requires it. It's not that they're being bad or doing whatever, they exist in a system that requires it. And so then you have to ask, and why is that? Okay? It's partly about the fact that the money they're giving you is ultimately the taxation of your everyday wananchi. Wananchi are actually the people that provide development assistance. So wananchi want to know, what are you doing with my money in Tanzania or in Kenya or in Uganda? That's part of the reason for needing so much accountability. Because as governments, they then have to say, right, we gave this much money to other people based on your tax money, and this is what we've done with it. That's one of the reasons why government money is so tight. If it's my own money, I'm a multi-millionaire and I decide to do something, I might just say like Mackenzie Scott, take it, enjoy your life. Okay? Because I can do that, because I have the authority to do that. So anytime we're asking what we're up to, we have to think about the why. But like I said, we have to think about this whole range of things that impacts on our ability to be resilient, which means our ability to last long, right? Our ability to bounce back, and our ability to serve serve a community, serve a greater mission in terms of what we're doing. Does that make sense? So that was the idea of just kind of trying to bubble up from you to understand what we're really talking about. So, and again, donors are one piece of a puzzle, and as Brian said, maybe who knows, donors are not even the answer. I mean, whatever, it's fine, right? We have to ask, because with this thing, what we need to do, and if we're here for systems transformation, what we need to do is stay very clear on the purpose of why we are here. That we are here is not the point. We have to stay very clear on the fact that we are here because we believe in our people and their right to thrive and their right to, have access and their right to live good lives and pursue dreams and contribute to the world. That's why we're here, okay? And again, in whatever piece of that you feel is important and with whatever dimension you feel is important to advance. And so whatever we do has to be contributing to that collective vision. Am I right? Okay? And so again, it's very important to maintain a sense of the purpose, right? And then just clarify kind of where we stand. So the purpose of being resilient is to last longer for our people so our people can benefit from the work we do. Is that fair? Yeah. If I add up all the things you said. Is it fair? Okay. All right. So just to say, and again, I don't want to then just come down to, and then the Ford Foundation did this thing because, well, we did, but it's fine. Again, because it's just a contribution to a collective conversation, right? It's not that Ford is whatever the one and whatever. It's just that it's a contribution to a collective conversation in the context of the bacteria and viruses in the ecosystem. Massive, devastation created by COVID and the economic impact. Social impact of it, as we know, domestic violence rates escalated, all manner of other things happened. Care was completely stretched. But also the uprisings of Black people in the US, but then in solidarity all around the world, showed that really we were at kind of breaking point, and we just needed one little thing and we'd be pushed. And so looking at that, the foundation said, what can we do? And again, as a giver, one of the primary things you can do is to give more money. So for the board actually decided to take on debt, which is kind of crazy because it's an endowed foundation and basically has, right, we live off of foundation's endowment. So actually decided to borrow $1 billion from the capital markets because it was an unprecedented moment. And Ford didn't have enough of its own money to give. And so said, we are willing to get into debt, $1 billion in debt, in order to generate money we can give because we believe enough, again, in the actors that we support, to have them be able to build something that helps them be stronger, basically. So in the States, that was invested in organizations and movement work around racial justice, because that was the key burning need there. And across our offices in the Global South, it was invested in something that we call Weaving Resilience. And the idea was to try and think about what are kind of the pillars underlying the work that need to be strengthened in order for the collective space to be stronger. And so we said, emotional well-being and mental health. One of the things the pandemic showed us was that actually our mental health is quite tenuous. And again, we're almost cracking, and it gave us one big pressure, and we can crack. It's quite serious. It was a very emotional time. I don't think we've really come to terms with that. So many people died. Even in our environments, when we say, oh, Africans didn't kill COVID, it's not true. Everybody has a story of someone who died from COVID, am I right? Yeah, so we can't say that actually, it's not true. We also had the emotional devastation of realizing the world didn't really care for us when it came to vaccines, access, etc., right? So there are lots of things that happened that were very emotional. Digital resilience, because we're in an increasing rapid tech environment, we do have AI, we don't even know what to do with it. There's so many human rights implications of AI, race implications around racial justice, and the guys that design it who are not thinking of us, who are not us, who are not thinking of us, and who create harms, digital harms. And we're really behind the curve when it comes to that. So how can we strengthen our digital resilience, okay? How can we think about financial resilience, which is what the three people here are engaged in, okay? And so we're, and in some contexts, people are also looking at narrative resilience, and also the protection and care. So how do we strengthen human rights defense in the context of, again, constant threat, but also sometimes rising attacks. So that was the idea, and we wanted to just share a little bit about how, so we have three amazing organizations that form the Financial Resilience Hub. And they are doing incredible work in rethinking a little bit how we think about resilience in East African context and for the work we do. So I'm just going to hand each, you can introduce yourself, share a little bit, and then we can just discuss, because I really want us to talk in the little time we have. Okay, so over to Jackie first.
Thank you so much. Good something. I hope we're all fine this afternoon. So I work with Civic Africa. We are. Oh, I stand. Oh, right there. Okay. Okay. So, this is an interesting conversation, which has made my heart stop, because I'm thinking, even in the work that we're doing, did we think about the system? So that's an interesting takeaway for me. But as part of the Resilience Hub with my colleagues, we are trying to test new things. As Civic Fund, which is part of the tripartite, there are three things that we are testing. And we are doing it through grant making, which is what Civic Fund does, and it is the host for the support that we got. Most of us, and so I'll explain very quickly, most of us who are grant receivers, grant recipients, receive money that we are then supposed to spend down to zero. If you don't spend it, you return it. That's generally the system that we work in. What we are attempting to experiment with as Civic Fund is giving grants where it does three things: meet a need, grow the seed, give some away. Because this system also tells us you get to keep. And so we're trying to say we're not only, and so being in that perpetual dependence, also puts you in a certain mindset and mind frame. So when we say we are competing for funds, it is because that's how the system is set up, right? And so I compete for me, for mine, instead of saying what I get, how do we share around us? So the grant that we are giving, which is 3 parts, meet a need, grow the seed, give some away, is to say within the grant that you get, there are needs that you have right now, but also think about how can you grow your money? And so organizations that we have partnered with, we also tag along a finance coach that then has a conversation with the organization to say what can work for us at where we are. And there are interesting stories that have come from that. And then, so that's the grow some money. This year, what we are then going to ask them to do when you receive the second grant, who in your ecosystem can you share some with? So that you are not just receiving to keep, but you're meeting a need, growing the seed, and giving some away. The second one, very, very quickly, that we're attempting to do in Uganda, civil society has also attempted 2 pots of money. One is Nafasi, because again, many of us pay really the bare minimums, depending on what we can fundraise. And so Nafasi is a cooperative for those that work in civil society, where we can keep our money and grow it, but for those that work in our organizations. Then there's another pot of money called Ujasiri, which is a pot of money that civil society organizations have said, because of these shifts in this system all the time, where there are donor shifts, and sometimes we have money, sometimes we don't, sometimes we want to say no to money, but we can't. How about we start to grow some of our own money? So that is civil society leaders coming together to say, let's grow money, so that when these shifts happen, we can start to support, again, our own, right? There's an organization struggling with rent. How do we use our Ujasiri money for the organization? Nafasi money is for the people that work in those organizations. So those are the 3 things that we have, 2 things that we have done. Finally, is we do a fitness and finance boot camp, which my colleagues have attended, and really just to say, can we start to think about how we think about money? Because again, the system that we work in largely tells us that money is evil, don't have it, even the narratives that we imbibe. And so it's to help us to start to think about not just money, but resources and resourcing differently, but also take care of the person. Because if you don't take care of you can't take care of your resource, then you affect community. So that's the thing that we are doing, but we also learn from our colleagues. KCDF that's going to tell us their story, very good at enabling communities, build endowments. So we're learning so that we can bring that learning to Uganda. And Foundation is very good at building the ecosystem, strengthening civil society. So that's how we are learning together as a collective. And I will give it to the lady so that the gentleman will be last.
Good afternoon. We're in this because we are really willing to share our experience. And so my name is Catherine Kiganjo. I work at Kenya Community Development Foundation, KCDF. And I think I'm privileged to stand here because I've been at KCDF since it started. So KCDF is 25 years, so what am I still doing there? So I can actually say I'm resilient, and so I probably have the right platform to speak about this. So what is KCDF doing in this space? Because of our experience and a desire to push resilience, organizational resilience, is that KCDF partnered from the inception to focus on its own, how would you survive beyond the future when you don't have funding? So from the word go, KCDF set up an endowment. So for us to know what an endowment is that it's a seed fund that you put aside and you keep growing it so that in the future, it can be able to give you some support. So you can continue raising your money from different donors, but you have a fallback in the event. You don't have funding to cover for a specific area, so you have unrestricted money. So I can actually say that that has really come to our benefit, especially during the COVID period when funding was low and we had to keep staff, and therefore we were able to draw money from the down. So that's part of that. So for KCDF, one of the things we are doing is in this space we are providing an opportunity to share our experience. So we are providing information, learning space. We are also providing, we are documenting our story. We've documented other financial organizations that have different approaches to how they have raised money for their financial resilience. So that information will be made available in our platform, and also we would be also available to share that experience, our own experience, the how we did this, and all that. So that really gives us that opportunity because we have been in that space. So we're actually sharing the tools and all that. So the other thing we're also doing is providing technical assistance and coaching and mentorship on how you can build opportunities for building your own resilience. And another thing that we're also doing in the capacity building or technical assistance is that we also will provide opportunities for exchange visits to see some of the organizations, and then they can be able to share their stories, when in your presence and all that. So, but the other thing is that we know that there's usually the ecosystem they're talking about. What are those things that will get in your way towards you building your resilience? And this is actually what we are calling the enabling environment. So we have gone into, within Kenya, we have been part of a process of looking at the laws that govern giving. And so, for instance, the foundation and trust law. Some of us, that is the registration in which we follow, but then there is no actual policies. The trust is registered under the Ministry of Lands, and the foundations are registered as company limited by guarantee. So the spaces in terms of laws and guidance, they are all in different spaces. So we are trying to influence, can this all be in one place, so that we are also able to govern ourselves and we are also able to have rules that really work for us. So we are part of that process. The other thing also we are realizing, because we are working in the East Africa region, we are trying to synthesize laws. Be able to bring together and have a platform in which we can all understand what are the laws that are available that will influence how we want to build resilience. So that information will also be made available in our platform. KCDF is also working, preparing a cross-learning platform where we will then upload information, a learning space, technical information on how, for example, do resource mobilization. And we'll also be trying to link up with other partners that we are working in the same space on resource mobilization, building capacity or strengthening organizations, because there are things people actually say they are struggling with. How do you raise money? So there's going to be that also that space provided. So just basically what we are doing is we've walked the journey. So I think the thing is always why should you make the mistakes? So it's more like mentorship where you say, let me help you walk the journey. You will learn, of course, you'll have your own experience within your own context, but then we are really willing to work, because we know if you don't purpose to do this, then you will always be struggling on how to survive. And I think, I think that's our story. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my name is Francis Kiwanga. I work with Foundation for Civil Society. We are based in Dar es Salaam and been working for over 20 years now, supporting civil societies, giving them building capacity as well as giving them grants. So I think 2 years before, we were approached by Civil Source and KCDF with this idea of forming up a financial hub, which is part of the Foundation program. And for us, the reason we joined the movement, because we believed, and came to us at the right time. So if I may contextualize this a bit, we as a foundation for many, many years, we have been a beneficiary of the bilateral support. So many embassies in Dar es Salaam will bring you money so that we push it to civil society organizations who are working in the grassroots. But gradually, we are dropping some of these donors. So I think when we attended one of the meetings organized by KCDF, because KCDF is one of our very close and peer organizations in Kenya. So we attended one of the meetings, I think it was 2016 or 2017. The meeting, the title of the meeting was Durable Development for communities. So we learned from them on the need to diversify our resources. And for us, we are very comfortable with our position there because with the bilateral donors, we get big checks, and it's okay. But gradually started now thinking about what if this support goes away. Actually, as we speak now, this will be the final year for us getting some support from bilateral donors because Denmark was the last working, Denmark's working with us, so they're dropping off this year, they're closing the mission in Dar es Salaam. So us cooperating with the KCDF, it really helped us now in terms of giving us thinking. So we started the journey on resource and diversification a while ago, and we visited Kenya. We also visited our friends in South Africa, Kagiso Trust, to learn how are they doing it. And we formed a trust under the foundation for resource diversification. So the idea is the trust will work, generate, and it is for profit actually. So it will make some money, and that eventually that money will be brought back to us, to keep us going. So when Jack was talking about the hub, I think one of the key elements of the hub is learning. That's why I said to share this experience. So the lessons from our friends KCDF and Kagiso are very, very vital to us towards the change. So what we do now in this movement, there are a number of things that we are doing. Number one is we are in the forefront in a leading conversation in Tanzania. They had a conversation about aid localization in Tanzania. As you all know, now there's a big competition for resources, and in the context where I'm coming from, you have this tendency of have few colleagues of the international organizations they're here. So I'm not saying anybody will get to you, but this is reality. So some of them, you have this tendency of, because they know resources becoming dwindling, so they are now registering themselves as local organizations, specifically in Tanzania. So what does that mean? So the resources, if Ford or other donors sometimes may earmark resource that need to come to Tanzania, to civil society in Tanzania, and then that resource cannot, you compete to get that resource. Like you do bidding and other forms of access to these resources. So what we end up with is these resources are going to these big guys because they know the language of donors, they can do big proposals. So they cannot, you as a local organization, you cannot compete. So we are trying to challenge this approach to development. So using this support, we are leading this conversation on aid localization. And one of the things that we have done is to do a big research about where money is coming from and where it is going, which is very, very important. Another thing that we do with the Weaving Resilience is building capabilities of CSOs on financial resilience. As I said at the beginning, we have worked with since we started operations, which is 20 years ago, we have worked with more than 6,000 organizations in Tanzania. So we build our approach to capacity building was we build capacity for them to be entities, to be institutions, which can be now have ability to undertake and carry on their missions, but also build capacity for them to do. So very practical issues, building systems, building capabilities in terms of competencies of some of these organizations. And then the third aspect was capacity to relate, for them to create the network that we have talked about here, which is very, very important for them to succeed in their mission. So with this support, with the Weaving Resilience, we realized we missed one bit, which is, so for instance, in some of these organizations, when we go and support them, they are happy with us, they work, they do very well. But when we go away, and some of them really go into sleeping, because they don't have any other source of fund apart from. So it became like everything, the source of livelihood to them. So the bit we are doing in this project is to build now the financial resilience for them to be able to diversify their sources. So like if you are going in fast, how are we helping them so that they're able to attract funders, other funders who will come and support whatever that they're doing. So resource diversification, good examples, for instance, building endowment, learning from KCDF, but also some of them like financial boot camps in Uganda. So we're also mobilizing our constituents, which is the civil society organizations, to do some of this experiential learning by really exchanging and going to other places then. The last bit that we are doing with this is the self-reliance to now these other two bits works about the institution. Now we went one layer down, which is looking at the people who are working within the civil society organization. So what extent can they be financially sustainable? Or sometimes to go like build the culture of saving, build the financial muscles for them to have ability to maintain their livelihood. So we're also setting up a SACCOS, which is like what our friends in Uganda are doing, but in Kenya as well. They have a good example with the Kimsitu SACCO. So we're trying also to build that in Tanzania, so that also people within the sector, they have financially, we are taking care of their wellness when it comes now to finances. So these are some of the issues we are dealing with this financial resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. So because we have 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is just actually ask you, if you have a clarifying question, it's okay, but I would actually like to ask you to just offer back into the room anything that has been an insight for you now around this question of resilience.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lorna. I'm from South Africa. And I think after the insults that were rained on us in the morning to wake up by Brian, I think it would be unfair to not say this. So given the keynote that he gave in the morning, what I was thinking about is how do we recognize the fact that resilience, sometimes as we use it, is a neoliberal trope, right? And the way that we push it forward. So you asked what resilience is in our languages, and my colleague and I, we're both Luo, and in Luo it's Chiruchan, which basically means enduring hardship, enduring poverty. There's so much endurance that is in the word resilience that we need to question who benefits from our resilience and how do we then advocate for fairer conditions for all rather than endure the hardship of the little that we have and survive within that hardship. And I think as we were having this conversation, I was just thinking about the fact that resilience really is a lot of hardship. But I was very happy to hear what everyone else.
But also just to notice that I appreciate that. I'm one of those people that goes deep. I just want to say I agree, but I also just want us to think about we're still in a victim positionality even in that analysis. Why are you even asking people for anything? Right? So it still is this idea that you're positioned somewhere where you're like enduring for what? So the question would be, if you were asking to change the whole system, why is it we're even in a position of asking who are we being subservient to? Right? That to me is the question. Yeah. So we'll do 1, 2, and then over there.
Catherine was giving Tuesday, and this is just a side note because I've worked in places where resilience has been a key element. And my question is based on a very popular phrase in Kenya: is resilience ever negative? And I think that also points to what she said. Beyond that, I just wanted to reflect on the contributions that have been made. And one of the things I was wondering, or maybe just would like more clarity, and I can always have time for that later, is does that also include sustainability of the courses, not just the institutions and those leading the institutions, and how can local fundraising be an element, and how can we innovate and mobilize community better? Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Inario from Maristopes. I come from the Zambian program. I think for me, it's just listening to Jessica when you talk about growing the seed. Sorry, Jack. When you talk about growing the seed, because right now we are all talking about a shrinking donor environment, right? Like, oh, there's no money from donors and so on. And there's this sense of doom. You know, if you're in Africa, you're like, oh my God, what next? You know, let's think of domestic resource mobilization and so on. And still thinking of the begging end, right? Or when you talk about growing the seed, it brings a lot of hope that you have this money that you can grow and begin to think of you being the person now funding, you know, and not the one asking all the time. So I think when you're an NGO, there should be this mind shift to having sort of like a commercial sense that begging end, you know, like, can we grow the money to help others than just keep asking and asking and asking. So thank you for that. I think it's really requiring a lot of thinking about how do we change the mindset of asking to a mindset of some sort of a conventional mindset to say we can actually make a bit of money from what we have and begin to help others.
And again, remember, as I said, because you see how we can sometimes be reductionist because we're in such a strong framework. So we also have the thing of there are only donors and grantees, but you remember this huge ecosystem. Any aspect of that ecosystem could potentially resource the cause, as I say, or resource the work. So keep thinking about that as well.
So thank you. My name is Sean Samuels from SGS Consulting based in Johannesburg, and that was the issue I wanted to raise, is around the ecosystem. And my insight, Jackie, were those parts that you were talking about, which I think is fascinating. I have been in South Africa, been speaking to asset managers, for example, so trying to see how do we exploit some of these corporate instruments. I'm trying to find a community-friendly asset manager. We know they manage billions in their portfolio, but if we were to come with our two parts, and I think it's a slow process, but I think we're getting agreement. Can you accommodate that so we can actually grow our sort of capital much faster in a bigger part is the one thing. But the other thing that's important was, I was in a workshop just before this when somebody defined an NGO as foreign funded proposal drafting outfit. It's like, ouch. and the question was, do we want to remain that? So I wanted to ask, in terms of your financial resilience, we had a very good session either yesterday or the day before around some of the other financial instruments, impact investors, angel investors, venture capital, and those kind of elements. Are those being factored in as also alternatives that we need to consider?
Hello, thank you very much. This has been quite an insightful session, week, everything, my head's spinning. But I want to address the AI piece, and the reason why I came from New York to talk about it. I feel there's so much rhetoric around how dangerous it is that it's actually, in my opinion, designed to keep us from actually accessing it. And I think that it actually takes, by us being able to access it, to be able to leverage it, whether it's generative in terms of making our work go faster, or even creating tools through it. We need to get on now, because otherwise the digital divide is going to get really, this is the kind of digital divide that's like 10x from before if you didn't get on social media. So I feel that, when we talk about this being part of the ecosystem, if you are able to use generative AI to do the work that you need to do, drafting your letters and all those things, you actually can cut your costs down significantly. And also increase your time savings. And so that's why I'm really trying to get people to understand how important it is. Yes, it is racist. There are things in there that you don't even want to see, but the more of us who use it, the more inputs that help to kind of balance out what those narratives are, and that's why we have to get on it.
Thank you so much, and I'm Josephine from Kenyan, and I just want to support what my sister said about growing the seed, and even if it will take long, but you have to grow a seed, because in another, not in Kenyan, but in another organization that I also give part of my time, we train teachers and from the pastoralist community in Kenya, in Kajiado, Narok, and Samburu. And in Kenya, those teachers that we train or we nurture from where they are, they later come and give back. And how they give back is that when they get jobs in Teacher Service Commission, there is a certain percent that they contribute to that organization. So, and that seed is planned in another way. So, and I think it's a good thing to share, because I was also telling our foundation, Kenyan Foundation, that the children that we are giving scholarship, and later they come to work with us in Kenyan Foundation, they will give back to their sisters and brothers in the same organization. How? If they get employment as an engineer, because we are drilling or we are powering the nation, if they get a job either in Kenyan or another company that is energy generating, they will still come back to us as a foundation, and they will still plant that seed. They will give back by donating, by educating one of them, and we have started a journey. We have a group that we call the pink and blue energy, and the two groups of the blue and the pink energy, what we do and what we are looking forward to do more is that when we have such meetings, those students that we are sponsoring or we are supporting will come in. And then the ones that have gotten jobs, they will also come in. And when they come in, they will see the ones that are already working, and they will take one of them, they will nurture them in a way, and they will start now growing with them. One is nurturing them. Number two is they will not have a major problem, because if they don't have soap, the engineer who is in the blue energy will also support that child. The lady who is in the pink energy will also support that child. So we need to grow a seed. We need to remove ourselves from the dependent things where we just focus on donor funding from the West, to localize and know how to get the fund from our fellow people, because we are all working to give back. Thank you.
So I just realized my watch actually stopped, the battery died, and that one doesn't work. So I just looked at the phone and I realized we're late. People have to go, so we're just gonna have to we had one last person, please be brief, and then we're gonna have to wrap up. So just in respect of time, because I said at the beginning, I'm one of those people that respects time, just in the service.
So I passed over the microphone because it was me, with me.
Pardon? Can you please be very brief then?
No, yes.
Okay.
So we've had quite a lot of initiatives that KCDF and Foundation, the other organization is doing in Uganda. But I think it's important for us to realize also it's taking a long time for us to be able to also realize the kind of funding we're trying to raise. And it's more, maybe I'll talk offside because I want to know up to now whether how much of funding they've been able to raise through whatever initiative that they have, given looking at also the amount of funding that we need to have. But again, I'm looking at the structure of organization. I think we also need to start changing, looking at how are we also going to support community-based organizations, perhaps to stop competing with them as the funding are becoming lesser. Perhaps we should change the model and perhaps getting the community-based organization to do to compete for this funding and remove this structure that we have. I think he addressed it very well. Are we preparing them to be able to get it? And then the third one is how are we also leverage from local giving, community giving, and are we also sort of looking at it in terms of monetary, because they also volunteer, they also give in kind. How are we also going to tap into all that instead of only looking at monetary value?
So this gentleman here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My name is Dennis Mutawe from Uganda. Yes, Ugandans are taking over. I come from the biggest kingdom of the country, Uganda Kingdom, and I work for the Queen, who I'm literally representing Nabagereka Development Foundation. And what we do, we are measuring into children, women, and the youth. This generation, you see, all of us are seated here. We happen to work so much and leave our families. From here, you will see people going to other places to make more money, and then forget about family. Grooming the children and putting morals in their children. And whatever we plan to do as philanthropians, you'll find that we've become short because we have left our families. We've not groomed them. Yeah? And what we do in Uganda, we have emphasized Ubuntu. We call it Ubuntu land. Yeah? We are telling this generation, wherever we go, that it is our honor to have a sense of shame in whatever we do. We need to have morality, honesty and empathy, civic engagement, self-reliance and responsible people, transparent people and integrity with proactive leaders. Why are we saying this? Because Africa, especially Africa, we've gone short of all these values. Civility, humility, and cleanness. When you go to Uganda and find ending and selflessness. Whatever we do as Africans, we need to have these values with us. Sorry that we had very limited time. We'll expand on this and people understand where the problem comes from. It's because we lost these values. And if we are to have this thing, an achievement, we need to go back here and have these values. Then we will achieve. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you too. So, and just on the values thing, I just like to say, because I disagree, but just to say that if you look at the values that are enshrined in, I would say probably all our organizations, and we come from a range of places, they echo the same principles. Yeah. We're all here trying to build worlds that are better for everybody, right? And to build worlds where there's mutual recognition, where people are respected, where people have opportunity. And I think that, as I said, everything has a history. And so we also didn't come in here with no history. And I do think that we build on those principles. If people are here for community, it means everybody in some way or another has something that they're trying to do, which is about respecting other people and building the community in different ways. So I think perhaps sometimes we just need to think a little bit more creatively on that question. But okay, so we need to end. But I just wanted to thank you. You've been great. in terms of really giving yourselves a space to think. And again, the idea was to have a generative conversation. It isn't supposed to provide concrete answers per se, but to just provide ways of thinking. So I mean, it feels that we've surfaced a few things. One is the idea that if you really go back and perhaps you want to do the exercise of drawing out your ecosystem, just think, are there any new relationships or relationships that you want to strengthen, okay? We have discussed, as we're thinking about resilience, the question of new tools. Are there new tools we can be using? We have, again, the AI, the whatever. People have offered here different types of tools, okay, that we can think about. New, and I say new because they exist, but I think perhaps it was new to you at this moment. New words, so we looked at words from our languages, which may not have been your language, so you heard a word from someone else's language, which is new. And new ways of thinking. Is resilience just really a synonym for enduring your suffering? Or does it mean really thinking about how you can be more sustainable as you go forward, right? How do you build something that's strong as opposed to something that is long suffering, right? Which is a bit different. And also this idea of we focused almost exclusively on the question of what we need, but to what extent have we thought of plant a seed? And then really, as people are saying here, even with the examples from energy sector and what have you, that actually, or the SACCOs, that people are actually thinking about different ways to give something back. And so how can we perhaps make them more visible and, like I said, not keep falling into this binary of we're here, these ones don't want to give us money, and there's just this binary conversation, when even in the actual work you do, there is more happening than that. And in a way, if you don't acknowledge it, it means you make it invisible, and you also can't grow it. If you have a massive community base, anytime you need something to happen, they are there. It means they're giving their hard-earned time, they're giving the resources, they're giving their bus fares and whatever to come to the thing, okay? And they're giving their emotional energy, which I must say is probably one of the most precious resources in the world, okay? And so we're not resourceless by any means, but is there a better way to capture so that we are actually acknowledging what we have? Even our knowledge pile, so when Brian was like, you don't produce anything, I was like, we produce knowledge, okay? You don't produce produce knowledge. Okay, but knowledge is actually a resource, and we actually live in a knowledge economy. So that does matter. So all of the people who are developing tools, right, IT tools and what have you, that's still a resource. So we have to acknowledge it. So we think of ourselves as more resource than we currently do. And so, like I said, this last thing is really try and think about what are new ways of thinking about what we already have. Okay? So I see people here, for example, for organizations like Giving Tuesday, etc. And these are initiatives that are designed to say, but we already have, right? And all of some of what you guys are already talking about in the existing mechanisms of giving, we already have significant ways of giving, we're just not seeing it. Just to end by saying, you know, in the development field, so we get these, oh, these guys aren't giving 0 to 6% of their GDP to aid and what have you. And you remember all of that research that was done around remittances that showed that remittances, and I wish I had the actual figures, I always keep forgetting to update them. I mean, like outscale, I mean, I'm talking like by multiple measures. The amount of money that people in the diaspora send home to the places that they come from are like vastly outstrips the combined development assistance that is given to from the north to the south. So, but what does it mean that we never note that? It means that what we're doing is making invisible the massive resourcing that migrants give back to their own people. And so we maintain this idea that the biggest givers in the world, okay, are historic colonizers. And it's not true. Okay? So again, as you think about resilience, just a parting thought to say, people here have shared all manner of things that are happening, embrace it. It actually exists, and it is perhaps actually what the world looks like. And maybe what we need to change is our vision, or the ways, the things that we're talking about, the language we're using, so that we can start building a slightly different reality. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Safe travels. And enjoy the rest of your time.